Hey everyone, what's up? Roshi is here. Today we're taking a look at the Bastion Rising cards. We're going to take a look at some of the synergies, where these cards could possibly fit in, and what decks might want them. Seems like some spicy cards, and some are more competitive than others, but all seem to, at least at some effect, have a home. You don't have to play any campaign games to get these. You just buy it, turn on the game, and boom, they're in your collection. Personally, I prefer this, but I know some people like the PvE stories and stuff. But I just like to hop straight into brewing, and having to spend 2 hours grinding out the commissions just doesn't do it for me. But let's take a look at the cards and go through and see what we've got going on. So, turn down, deal damage to the enemy player equal to the cost of a spell they are playing. I have a feeling this will be good in like a fire deck market. Where it will shine the most is with the Shadow 1 power, grab a card that's cost 1 from your market, or even just a regular like Fire Etchings market. If someone plays an 8 of the Horo against you and you're able to do this and they don't block it with Aegis, that should just one-shot them. So, pretty silly. You could also give this spell double damage too, which could make things quite hilarious. They go for a harsh roll and you're like, take 10. Okay for 1 power. A lot of times though, this is only going to do 2 or 3 damage, so keep in mind that maybe this is a market card. You could try and main deck 4 and just get lucky and play against people playing big spells, but that might be a bit of a stretch. Erica, we've had her a little longer because she was in the pre-order. Kind of the way I look at her is, you know, if you're ever attacking with her, I mean, great. But most of the time she's going to be a 6 power die to removal. And if you ever do attack with her, she's going to close out a game real fast. I'm sure the draft players will enjoy picking this card, but unless you're playing some sort of like even Valkyries or something in Rakano, I don't really know why you're playing Erica. So yeah, I'm not sure about this one. Maybe if you can give her charge or something, but not a lot of very efficient ways to do that. So kind of sketchy there. And the other thing too is, you know, when Erica attacks, you can't just give her killer, because that would require everything else to be attacking at the same time to get the buff. So the other ways in the past where we've been able to cheat out early attacks don't work on her. But maybe there's an aggro deck that wants to just slam this as a fatty and close out the game. Astrid Patrol. The only thing I can really think of with this is, it can be, it can be a pretty big bomb. I have a feeling that this could see play in a Sling deck, because at that stage in the game when you're casting it, it should be a 6/6 or, you know, bigger, and that will trigger your Sling. So I think that's pretty cool. I might be misreading how this card works. I'd have to actually play it to see. I'm not sure if it will have the power and toughness while it's in your hand, or how this even works, but potentially look out for this in Sling, and it could just be an efficient beater too, because it has flying and can potentially be huge. So I'm not sure I fully understand how this card works yet. I'll have to play with it first, but this could see play, depending on how this works. Distortion Orb. Cursed player units and spells cost 1 more, and yours cost 1 less. This trolls a lot of market cards. You know, Crack the Earth and all of that cycle, Transpose. Get this in play, it'll just completely turn off their market. Pretty sure, because then they won't be able to retrieve anything from it. And that's pretty cool. It's kind of a fringe card, and the fact that if they, speaking of Transpose, if they have Aegis, this is just a 6 power get countered. So definitely if you're going to play this, maybe play with Baby Vara. You can pop Aegises, or have some way to pick apart their Aegis before you cast it. It's probably a market card. I don't think we're going to see main deck Distortion Orbs. Maybe there's a deck that plays a bunch of treasures and like Garden that wants to have Orb as like an extra Garden. But I don't know about that. Champion's Oath, your units have Imbue. Maybe something will break this card, but I have a feeling no one's gonna play it. As the game is now, I don't think this card's gonna see play. Maybe in the future though. When you play Relic, play 2 Justice Sigils from your deck depleted. It's a 5-power 3/3. I think this is just a draft bomb, honestly. Maybe I'm not valuing Imbue high enough, but yeah, I don't know. If you're playing like really cheap relics, then maybe you could pop off. Like, play City Constructor and slim some Azurite Priestesses. That's kind of sketchy. That's kind of silly. I don't know. I don't know if this will see any play, but maybe there's a deck out there that wants to do that and just play a bunch of cheap relics. You cast this, play the relics, and boom, you're at 7 power, 9 power, whatever. But it's kind of fragile and might be a little too much. Maybe Expedition's slow enough to make a card like this work, but I don't think this is fast enough for Throne. Metallic Razorbeak is actually really good. It's kind of scary. Giving a unit evasion and berserk seems like a good way to close out a game. And the fact that this also has flying and berserk on itself means you can, in a pump deck or a deck looking to go big with spells, I can see this card being good. So like your Horo Aggro decks might like this card. Near Perfect Imitation. I'll get into this one in more detail later. I actually have a lot of synergies lined up for that. For Fall of House Roa, I don't know about this one. Like, if you can cast it from your Void somehow or the top of your deck, maybe this gets better, but I don't see a lot of times whenever you're going to be able to play this for less than, like, 5 or 7. Obviously, if you can spend 1 power on this and do it, that's great, but then you're at 1 life, so it's an interesting card. Maybe like a mid-range deck wants it, but I feel like Curtain Call kind of just does the same thing but better. And yeah, that's my opinion on that. The Muk Shaman, Muk Shaman, when an enemy gets minus, your units get +2. Being a vanilla 5/5, like, a pretty decent rate, and like pumping your guys is cool. I'm not really sure how this card would actually play out in a game. Like, there's plenty of stuff like Malediction and a whole bunch of other cards that are similar to that. You've got Quiver and Warlock's Brew, which Quiver just casts, and Devouring Shadow. Pretty sure this would probably work with Decay, so like at any cost, or the weapons. So you could theoretically pump the crap out of your team with this. So it's something to keep in mind, and it's on a decent body. Can't be checked, so maybe this could be a way to close out a game in like a shadow-based list. Okessa, I'll get back to her later. I have some synergies lined up for her. Glaive of the Chosen, I think this card's interesting. I'm not sure how viable it'll really be. Like, really markets aren't just filled with minions, but maybe there's 1 or 2 minions you don't mind like pumping the crap out of, and then you get it from your market and you win the game with it. Like, I guess it would be annoying if someone like powered up in Ikaria a whole bunch or whatever. So not the worst card, but you can play it with 3 power and then surge it and like trade with something, and then your market guys have +2. That's how I see this being used. I don't think we're going to see people playing Glaive of the Chosen and Reaping, But if you want to do that, I won't. I won't be the one to tell you no. Sling of the Chi. This is one of the most hyped cards. A lot of people are playing it already on the ladder. I have some synergies lined up for it, and I'll probably end up playing it too. But I'll go over some of the cards that kind of play well with Sling of the Chi a little later. Dangelo Arson. This is basically like a bad Blightning. I suppose sometimes you can amplify and deal 3 damage. But I imagine most of the time you're just playing this for the 3 power, discard 2. So I'd think like a Manacles deck wouldn't mind having this. The rate of dealing 3 damage to the enemy player is kind of awkward, you know, like 7 power for an Obliterate, 9 power for 9 damage, and then at that point the rate starts to actually get pretty good. So maybe if you're playing some sort of spaghetti ramp deck with Stone Scar Killers, close out a game with this, but I feel like people just use it for the discard, and the damage to the face is just a bonus. If you ever have nothing better to do. Brody is basically on paper a 1 power 3/3. So that's scary. You know, he doesn't block as a 3/3, but Combrai don't usually block anyway, so. The art is also insane, so there's that. I mean, he's holding like... This looks like the Wonder Waffle from Nazi Zombies. But yeah, this guy's kind of sweet. I'm sure I'll die to a 1 power 3/3 my fair share amount of times. And there's quite a few Minotaurs that have synergy with. I'm sure there's even more. It's nice to get another card that does this. I think in the past we had like a Walls Matter card and it was just complete crap. I don't even remember the name of it, that's how bad it was. Fertile Soil I'll get to later. Not a lot of synergies, but it's pretty obvious. Send an Agent is absolutely insane. Kill an enemy unit or relic with 1 faction or less. This kills World Pyre, this kills Xenon Obelisk, it kills Prism Golem, and it also kills everything Annihilate would kill. If you're playing Xenon, you probably main deck 4 of these forever. Like, I don't think... Even if you're playing Talir combo, I think you just main deck 4 of this card. It's that good. You know, before we used to play stuff like Banish in this slot, but this is 1 power cheaper and does more. Like, I have no idea what they were thinking, but expect Xenon to just be really popular, or, you know, splashing into Xenon even. Because this is just really efficient removal. It's a catch-all, it's cheap. Yeah, I could talk about it, but this card's good and people will play it, and if you're playing Xenon, you should probably be playing it. Marco Stormhalt, kind of a silly bomb. If you can protect him and whatnot, then maybe he'd be a good card draw engine. I feel like the funniest way to use him would be with like Copperhall Blessings and Copperhall Blessing and whatever the prevent. You can minus your opponent's attack stats for each forest you have, or justice you have. Sorry, I forget the name of the card, but basically you could put him in like a Turbo Fog deck, but then the problem is he'll just die. But it could be funny if you ever pulled it off. And whenever your units attack, Marcos just gets absolutely massive. It probably isn't supposed to go in a Turbo Fog list, maybe just as like a top end. But seems pretty sweet. I like his sword, so that. Know Thy Enemy. This is pretty efficient removal. It should annoy Yetis, hopefully enough to, you know, punish them and some of the other fast blazing aggro decks. And the Amplify is pretty sweet. One of the things, I want to say Golgari, but I know that's wrong. Arjun Port lacks is a way to... They don't have as much card advantage as some of the other factions. Like, there are options, but usually they have like efficient threats. So this could actually, if they're flooding out and they've got all their power they've accumulated from Hojans and Ikarias and their other ramp they have, You know, they could spend 6 power into this or 8 power into this and rip a few Rollants into play or something and wipe the board. That'd be a pretty game-winning line against a lot of decks, especially decks where, you know, killing 2 units or less matter. It could also just be a market card, but I could actually see this being a main deck card just because of the Amplify. Uxu, we've known about this for a bit. It's kind of a spaghetti card. I don't know, like in Throne, I don't really see a deck like this living long enough to even cast Uxu and like have to draw it after it's been buffed. So if this is just in your opening hand, that's terrible. It's a 7 power 4/4. So not really sure. I think the jury's still out on this one. Maybe if you're playing like a Shrine deck, you want this, like FPS Shrine maybe, as just like a massive top out after you've played all kinds of BS the whole game. That's the first thing that comes to mind, but maybe there's more. But definitely the theme of this would be, if you're self-milling, this gets good as well. So as long, you know, if you're playing like the Sporefolk guy and just ripping a bunch of your stuff into the void, Uxu could be a very reasonable threat. And if it's getting like lifesteal and killer, that could go a long way towards keeping you alive. And its stats should get out of hand pretty quickly. So you can't get double Aegis or double Berserk. So once you get any of these battle skills, only the rest of them will be open. And I think it's very unlikely that you ever get 4 +5 -1s and it just dies immediately. You'd have to play a lot of games before that happened. Beacon, everyone knows about Beacon. This card's great. I already have a deck for that. I can show that real quick after we look up the next few cards. Grand Suppressor, cards can't use summon abilities. This shuts off merchants and stuff, which is cool. It's actually quite a bit that it shuts off, but it's nice that it's a 2/3, but I don't know. Maybe if we get a little bit more Hate Bears, which is a form. It was a card type or deck type in Magic where you would play a bunch of creatures that just like hate on different things. Maybe Hate Bears could exist here, but we need more. Like, you can't just play just this. You'd have to be hating on a lot, and also be able to just win against aggro too in the meantime. Then Pumpworks Monstrosity has +1/+1 for every 10 cards in your deck, and boom, shuffle your void into your deck. This is scary, and the reason why is now every single faction has access to a way to shuffle your void into your deck. So the reason why this is scary is, you know, we're gonna see more infinite, like, you're not locked into time now if you want to like have this spaghetti deck that just keeps going and going and going and going, or some crazy combo. You just have to kill your Pumpworks Monstrosity, you know, play a Devour on it or something, and boom, your void's flipping back through. Maybe you've given Destiny to 8 of the Horo, or you've got a bunch of Destinied Clockroaches, or whatever, like a bunch of crap in your void. Well, now, or, you know, for a while I was trying to give Destiny to invoke the Waystones. This will enable that in just about every faction, as long as you have a way to kill it. So that is scary. As a beater, it's probably not great, but, you know, I'm sure someone out there is going to build a 150 card deck and put Pumpworks Monstrosities in it, but I wouldn't advise doing that unless it's just as a joke. So let's take a look at some of the lists that I was talking about. First one's real quick, pretty obvious. Just a starting point for Fertile Soil is we would play Fertile Soil with Hermit Gardener. This should be obvious, but being able to pump your seeds, great. Every time you transform a card, Fertile Soil cost is reduced. So I didn't include them, but we'd be playing stuff like Desert Alchemist and Plunder effects and similar stuff to make our fertile soil super cheap, and then we'll play them, play Hermit Gardener. We can Dark Return Hermit Gardener, Sleeping Draught Hermit Gardener, Haunting Scream Hermit Gardener. Plenty of ways to just keep playing Hermit Gardener over and over and over again. You obviously wouldn't play this many reanimation effects, but I just wanted to show some of the synergies and how you could really get seedy with it on the ladder. Near Perfect Imitation. So where this card gets spicy is with units that don't necessarily have enter the battlefield effects, but have attack effects. Because what this does is transforms one of your units. So what this means is, if you've got a unit that can already attack, you play this, and then boom, your unit is able to attack immediately. So with Eileen, that's draw 2. Lists, that's going to equate to player, one of the players discarding their hand and drawing that many. Aria is insane. Marcos is in here because why not? Severin can work. You could Near Perfect Imitation, put Severin into play, and then reap a few times if you wanted to. That's definitely an option. Talir, attack, play the top card of your deck. To loot, shrink the entire enemy team and ramp. Uxu can work if you've got like a pretty spicy Uxu in the void. Vara brings stuff back, so this would actually be, I think this would be the main synergy if I had to pick, where you'd turn your Blightmoth Shade into a Vara and attack, and then bring back something else. So that could be sick. Zaichi has a good Entomb effect, so I include him. He's also a strong beater. Great Kiln Titan. This will let you just play the top card of your deck. Similar to Talir, except you don't need to attack to do it. It just happens. Mokto would be hilarious against like a fire deck where they don't really have a way to deal with Mokto. They have to like obliterate him and then find a way to kill you. So that could be cool. Mokanati, you could refill your hand with him. And then Vara, obviously, even though we don't get the play a unit effect, maybe you're playing other shadow units, play one immediately. Emergent Colossus actually seems pretty hilarious with this. When it hits the enemy player, you draw a card with cost 6 or more from your void and reduce its cost by 6. So this card's actually up there on like, not letting me increase because I only have 1. But this card's actually up there on the list of like good synergy. Very close to Vara. Except Vara has lifesteal, which I think would make it a little better, but this guy hits really hard and actually draws the cards from your void and makes them cheap. Want to? Between those two, I think that would be pretty solid. Because he has Overwhelm, most likely you're going to be able to punch through, but, you know. World Joiner is just a hilarious beater. You attack with this even once in a lot of matchups, and it gets massively out of hand. And Near Perfect Imitation can kind of guarantee we get that one attack. Zaxo, you can get really lucky with Zaxo, so I included him and just flip a whole bunch of cards into play. Every time I seem to go for Zaxo, I just flip a power, but maybe you can flip better than I can. And then the most obvious one is Scourge of Frostholm. The enemy player can't play spells. You could theoretically do this on turn 5 and block like a garden player out of the game, basically. And that's pretty sick. So those are the synergies for Near Perfect Imitation. Next up, we've got Sling. So I like Sling a lot. It does not work with Imbue like I originally thought, but does 6 damage if you've got 6 power unit that you're playing and gain 6 life or more, or whenever your unit has 6 or more health and it's still in play, you draw a card, and enemies can't transform your cards, which is sweet. So I have a feeling Astrid Patrol will work with this. Lurking Raptors is a pretty cheeky card you could play with this. So I brought up Imbue earlier, but even though we can't actually imbue and trigger our Sling, or at least not the first half, Lurking Raptors can actually do some work with a few other cards, and I'll just show them now. Can't attack the enemy or block, but this makes Stigmalock very cheap. We can use it to bond in to play Forging Sauropod for 4, and all of these will actually trigger both halves of the Sling. So this is one of the cool synergies we could do if we decided to play dinosaurs. And then you could add in like Maveloft Huntress or Donica or something similar, and make other uses of the Lurking Raptor's body that you just have. But yeah, that could be pretty sick. A very swingy play is like you play Lurking Raptors, you deal 6 damage to something, then you bond into play Forging Sauropod, so maybe power that turn. That's 2 6 damages, and then you got this like derpy Sauropod in play, and you'll draw a card. So that's pretty strong. Refracted Sentinel is one of the cheapest ways we can deal, which I consider the removal aspect to be the more important half. But obviously you want some cards that gain life, but I think killing your opponent's stuff and keeping yourself alive can be more important. Yeah, like I said, Imbue doesn't really work as much, but if you were to Slag for your Berserker or Lurking Raptors, that's a hilarious curve. You got a 7/7 Berserker chilling there. Seems alright. I mentioned Donica. Guardian of the Spring is actually pretty cool. You give your enemy an Eye of Winter, but then we can play 4 Siege Breakers with it and kill the relics. Obviously a non-bow if they're playing relics, but this gives us a way to like kind of remove the downside of Guardian of Spring. You know, if you wanted to play that card. We could also just play Monolith Guardian, which would be a 4-power 7/7 if we've got our Sling in play. This kind of goes all in onto the Sling plan, and maybe you would play some other relics to go along with it, but that could be cool. I could see like a Power Stone being good, just to help ramp into this. Siege Train's a good option, just very aggressive. I like a lead a lot. Being a 6/6 on his own, but he'll activate both halves of Sling. He's not too hard to cast, and all of your units you draw from that point will just be out of hand. Plus, you'll get 1 draw off of Sling usually before your opponent's able to like fast removal. And then Surso is just once again another 6/6. Thick, hard to deal with, and quite the issue of like punching through. Combustion Brawler could be good if you're playing a more aggressive version of this. Shift them into play, exhaust a unit, damage to another unit, and then they can't get. Hermit Gardener is cool. He only triggers 1/2 of it, but making the 2 little seeds can totally a game-changing amount of blockers. Just slow down aggro decks and stuff. Gila can be solid as well. Another 5-power 6/6. Mages of the Mist, also a 5-power 6/6, but if they have Torch, then Dragon's just dead. It's definitely an option. And then Pearlescent Drake can actually be a 5-power 6/7 if you attacked, or did a pretty solid option, being that it has flying. You could probably only block with it once, but hopefully it coming down would kill any flyers that are trolling you. Close out the game real fast. Nash, definitely a non-bow with Pearlescent Drake and Magus, but he's a solid 6/6. Killing one of your opponent's ground pounders and all of their flyers seems like a good way to win a game to me. Grodov Stranger, it's just one of the best 6/6s out there, so why shouldn't we include it? And then Arcanum Battery, I actually think this might be one of the best options. If you're playing Sling of the Chi, you're probably going to be playing Calibrate. You know, and some other removal maybe. And so I guess that doesn't really make much of a difference with him, but he'll be pretty cheap. So it'll be a cheap way to, even if we have like 4 or 5 time influence, that's a 4-power 6/6 or a 5-power 6/6 even is just fine. And we could play stuff like Obliterate if we wanted to, or whatever, and make use of him. There's also the Sight, I didn't include it. Let's just pull it up here now. This was the other card. I thought of this after I kind of put this together, but Howling Peak is another good option. It also plays kind of nicely with our battery because we can deal the 5 damage and trigger and make it. But making copies of your guys, the copy would come in and trigger your sling as well. And Caleb's Favor would give you an extra power, which is cool. So Howling Peak could definitely be a good option in this list. Yeah, those are the synergies for Sling. And then last but not least, Okessa. So taking a look at her, when a relic goes to your void, create and draw a treasure trove. And once per turn, you may exhaust 2 of your other units to play a relic from your hand. The most obvious way to use this card is we're going to put like Martyr's Chains in play, or Pit of Lanekta, and this would be a throne deck. But if we're playing, Expedition, where maybe it's a little slower, we can put like the Last Word into play, we can put Great Swords and Grodov's Burdens into play. We could even put 4-drops into play, it wouldn't be terrible. But she does have another half of her text. I don't think the first half of her text is the most important part of it. But if we wanted to, we could play really hard into that. And like make a bunch of treasures, and that could be pretty cool. So potentially, if we were playing Consuming Greed and Lethrai Lobotomy, we could play a lot of cheap relics and sacrifice them and get a bunch of treasures popping. So Numbing Cold is a cool one to play. Aractodon Egg and Family Charter, they're both kind of cheap relics that you could throw down and eventually sack. I just try to include every relic that like sacks itself, just to show you that you can sometimes get additional value. But I think the coolest would be Bottled Storm and where is it at? Waystone Gate. You could Lethrai Lobot, like let's say we had some tokens into play from like Rat Cage would be the most obvious one. We'd play Rat Cages and it would make a bunch of rats, and then we'd play Okessa, immediately put like a Waystone Gate or a Bottled Storm into play, and then we could lobotomy it, and we'd get a treasure, and we'd draw 3, or we'd get a treasure and play an 8/8. So that could be solid. You could also just put it in Battery's Toted deck, and that could be cool as well. Yeah, that's Okessa. She's sweet. I kind of rambled for a long time, but I wanted to give my opinions on some of these cards and just some ideas floating around in my head and where I'll probably be starting once I go live and start brewing. So thank you for watching, and everyone enjoy the new set.